There is one instruction Jesus gave that terrified us in the occult more than fasting, more than prayer, more than deliverance, and even more than worship. And most Christians don't realize how powerful it is because it sounds so gentle, so passive, so human. Bless those who curse you. When I was practicing witchcraft, we mocked Christians who prayed loudly. We weren't intimidated by people who shouted scriptures. We weren't concerned about believers who argued theology online. But there was one kind of Christian we were trained to avoid: the one who did not retaliate, the one who did not curse back, the one who blessed instead of reacting. I remember the first time an assignment collapsed because of this. We expected emotional backlash. We expected fear, anger, or confrontation. Instead, the person quietly prayed for the very people trying to harm them. And something broke, not metaphorically, strategically, because in the occult, we understood a truth many believers never learn: blessing is not weakness. It is spiritual authority expressed without aggression. Tonight, I want to explain why witches fear Christians who bless their enemies, not in theory, but in practice. Because when you understand this, you stop fighting the wrong way and start winning quietly. To understand why blessing is dangerous to the enemy, you need to understand how witchcraft feeds. Witchcraft does not run on power alone. It runs on exchange. Emotion is fuel. Reaction is access. Agreement is permission. In the occult, curses were not effective unless the target reacted internally. Fear, anger, hatred, obsession, these emotions created a loop. Energy went out. Energy came back. That's how influence was sustained. When a Christian responds with anger, the loop stays open. When a Christian retaliates, the exchange continues. When a Christian curses back, they unknowingly cooperate. But blessing shuts the loop down. No exchange, no return, no access. That's why it terrified us. This may shock you, but most rituals fail without emotional reaction on the other side. We weren't looking for holy people. We were looking for reactive people. People who replayed conversations. People who obsessed over betrayal. People who carried offense into prayer. People who spoke curses in frustration. Reaction multiplies influence. That's why the enemy works so hard to provoke you. But when a believer blesses instead of reacts, something stops mid-flow. There is no emotional hook, no spiritual friction. It's like striking a match in water. Let me tell you what actually happens spiritually when you bless your enemies. First, you remove yourself from the battlefield the enemy chose. You stop fighting on emotional ground and shift into authority. Second, you cut off reinforcement. Whatever assignment was active can no longer feed. Third, and this is the part we hated, you place the situation directly under God's jurisdiction. In witchcraft, we avoided situations where God was actively invited to judge, correct, or intervene. Because once a believer surrendered retaliation, we lost leverage. Blessing isn't passive, it's decisive. Offense feels justified. That's why it's effective. In the occult, offense was one of the easiest doorways to exploit. It keeps people spiritually busy but inwardly stagnant. Offended believers pray, but without peace. They worship, but without rest. They fast, but with resentment. Blessing destroys offense at the root. You cannot bless someone sincerely while holding bitterness. One cancels the other. That's why blessing feels costly and why it's powerful. There was a believer we monitored for months. No visible compromise, no fear, no retaliation. When attacked, they prayed. When lied about, they stayed silent. When betrayed, they asked God to heal everyone involved, including the betrayer. We withdrew the assignment, not because they were perfect, but because there was nothing to work with. No reaction, no agreement, no access. That believer didn't win loudly. They won by refusing to participate. The enemy expects patterns. Hatred for hatred, anger for anger, retaliation for attack. Blessing breaks predictability. And when predictability is broken, strategy collapses. In witchcraft, confusion on our side was dangerous. It meant timing failed, coordination failed, momentum died. Blessing introduces holy disorder into dark plans. Jesus didn't teach blessing enemies to make you nice. He taught it to make you untouchable. When you bless, you step out of the cycle. When you forgive, you revoke access. When you pray for enemies, you disarm them spiritually, whether they know it or not. This is not about personality, it's about positioning. Let me be clear, because many misunderstand this. Blessing is not trusting unsafe people, allowing abuse, staying silent in injustice, removing boundaries. You can bless and still set boundaries. You can forgive and still walk away. You can pray and still protect your space. In the occult, we feared believers who combined love with boundaries. That combination is deadly to manipulation. Blessing doesn't require feelings. It requires obedience. You don't wait until you feel peaceful. You don't wait until you feel kind. You choose alignment. A simple prayer is enough. God, I release them. I ask you to bless them according to your will, and I place this situation in your hands. That prayer ends more spiritual assignments than hours of warfare language. Most retaliation happens internally at night. Replaying words, imagining arguments, rehearsing pain. That's when blessing matters most. When you bless before sleep, you close emotional doors before rest. You remove fuel before the enemy can use it. That's why peace follows obedience so quickly. After blessing, your sleep improves, your clarity returns, your emotional charge fades, your prayers feel lighter. Not because the situation changed, but because you did. And when you change position, influence shifts. Let me leave you with this truth. Witches do not fear loud Christians. They fear aligned Christians. Christians who bless instead of curse. Who forgive instead of replay? Who release instead of retaliate? Because those believers are no longer participating. And when you don't participate, the enemy has no power to sustain what he started. Blessing is not weakness. It is warfare without noise, victory without drama, authority without display. And once you learn this, you stop fighting battles that were never meant to be loud. You simply stand, and everything else falls away.